Hi guys, this is Anna Bloom and this is gonna be my March wrap-up video. I've read 16 books in March because I joined the Goodreads reading challenge, so I have quite a lot to discuss in this video. I'll be going from my least favorite book to my favorite book, and I'll discuss them all briefly. A lot of the books I read were ebooks, so I'll post them somewhere here so you can look at them. And here I'll go. The first book I'll discuss is Legacy by Ellery A. Kane. This book is a dystopian book. I originally picked it up because the description said it was about a world in which you could choose your emotions, but the actual story skipped that and went straight to the whole rebellion stuff. The reason I read and loved books like The Hunger Games and Divergent was because they would at first describe this world before just challenging the regime and going into a revolution. In this book we went straight to the revolution, and also the main character, she was really bland and just knew what everyone else was feeling by sensing that they were angry or sensing that they were actually keeping secrets, and everyone would just trust her immediately with all their deepest secrets, and it was just really unbelievable and it got kind of dull because of that. I rated this book 1 star on Goodreads because I just didn't like it at all. The second book is Cinder. I also mentioned this in my introduction video that it was the last book I read, and it's by Marissa Meyer. I was really disappointed in this. I also read Heartless, which I will discuss later in this video, but this book just wasn't up to the level of Heartless. I really loved Heartless. I'll talk about it more later. And then when I read Cinder, I was hoping to be wowed again by an amazing story, and it just fell flat. The characters weren't as interesting as I had hoped, and even though I really enjoyed the plot of this whole cyborg Cinderella and this new future, it was just really predictable, and that's why I really didn't like it. I rated it 2 stars. I liked it a lot better than Legacy, but still I was really disappointed by this book. The third book I'll discuss is Of Beast and Beauty by Stacey Jay. I also rated this book 2 stars. This book is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which sounded really interesting at first. It's about this blind princess who lives inside a walled city, and outside the walls live monsters, and when she meets this monster they start falling in love. But one of the problems I had was this blind princess, and the way she was depicted just didn't seem real to me. Like, in high school I had a really good friend who was blind, and the way this princess was described was so different from how I usually saw my own friend. Like, she had to count steps in her own room, and I don't think that's how it works. I mean, I can walk around my own room with my eyes closed, so why can someone who's been blind for most of her life do that? I just thought it was really weird, and it really made me not really enjoy it. And also, the plot was quite predictable, and that's why I didn't really like it as much. The fourth book is Mandarin Yellow by Stephen M. Roth. This book is a mystery kind of detective kind of book about a man who is then forced by his father-in-law to solve a criminal case, even though he has no experience whatsoever. He actually does solve the case quite easily without too much trouble, which I do find a bit unbelievable, but that's just how detective books work, I guess. This book wasn't as predictable as the other book, that's why I rated this 3 stars, but I just couldn't really get into it. I really enjoyed how they used Chinese history and depicted it in this book. It made it really interesting and I learned a lot. I just didn't love it. The next book is another 3-star book. It's Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. I really wanted to enjoy Percy Jackson. I wanted a new Harry Potter series to love as much as I did when I read those. And it just didn't happen. It's not a bad book, and I really liked how they depicted the Greek gods in the books. But I didn't like Percy as a character that much, and that's fine because I also don't like Harry Potter as a character that much. But I also didn't like Annabeth, and I seem to only like the side characters in this book. And while the story is good, it's not great, and that's why it ended up being a 3-star read for me. The next book, also by Rick Riordan, is the second book of the Percy Jackson series, which I also read this month. It's The Sea of Monsters, and I liked it better than The Lightning Thief. I love the new character Tyson. Again, I really enjoy all the side characters in these books. But again, although it's better, it's still a 3-star read for me, and I just don't love it. And again, the next book, it's not really a surprise, I guess. It's The Titan's Curse, also from the Percy Jackson series. Another 3-star read. I liked it a bit better than the previous ones again. They keep getting better, but I still don't feel the love. I wish I loved them. I wanted to love them so much, and it just didn't happen. I'm really sad about that. The 8th book I read this month was The Boy Who Lost Fairyland by Catherine M. Valenti. This book really feels like a classical fairy tale. It's about changelings, but instead of talking about a human going to fairyland, it's about this troll boy who is now stuck in a human world, and it's like how he sees the human world. Like, he lived in a fairyland and he was used to things talking to him, and then he came to the human world and suddenly the table and the beds and the clocks and everything just wouldn't talk to him, and he got really frustrated, and it just shows how this little troll tries to function as a normal person, as his new parents tell him. It's really interesting to see, and it really, to me, it felt like a real big question between nature and nurture. And I felt like a lot of the things, it's not like a human just gets born and knows how school works and how to behave. It's something you learn from your parents, in my opinion. But yeah, in this book he just has these inherent qualities about how to do these things, and he just doesn't know how these normal humans do that living. I think everyone who reads it can like really connect with the troll, because I think most of us have at times thought, how do you do that? How can you be normal? What is normal even? So it was a really interesting, fun book to read. The writing style was really, to me it felt like a classical fairy story from like Ireland, and it was really well done. I found out later that this is actually the 4th book in a series, but you can really read it as a standalone without problems, like I did. The 9th book I read was Watcher's Web by Patty Jensen. In this book, a girl has this magical powers to create webs around people and manipulate them through that. But then suddenly she gets transported to another world where she has to live with these aliens who find her, and she just wants to go home. But instead people want to use her for their own particular things. And it was really interesting to read how these aliens were described. They were really different from humans, and you could really feel in everything how alien they were. They had their own language and their own human, and it was super fun to read that. It's the first 4-star book I read this month, and it was really interesting, but this book had another love triangle, which is really common these days, and it just was so annoying. This one guy was really, I guess he used his web to make her fall in love with him, and then everything went wrong, and it was just really a pity of this book. Though I really enjoyed it, the aliens, the alien world, how different everything was. It was really well done. The 10th book I read this month was another 4-star read. It was Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I started this book a bit, well, I wasn't quite sure what to think, as the part at her own island was quite dull, I guess, and the writing style was so flowery with all these random colors almost, it felt. But then when they entered Caraval, I really loved it. The writing style suddenly seemed to fit, and the plot was really engaging. I just wanted to read more and more. But on the other hand, the ending felt really predictable and I just felt unsatisfied at the end. Which is why it's not a 5-star read but a 4-star read. But it was a really good book. I just one of the problems I had with this was this girl goes to save her sister pretty much, but then when she talks about her sister, she doesn't even seem to like her sister. Like when they were together, the sister seemed really like a nice person, but then once she's gone and you only hear about her sister through this main character, she doesn't even seem to like her, but yet she goes all out to save her, and that was so weird to me. But the world building was so good, and I loved this whole Caraval world, which really felt like Alice in Wonderland, even though by then I hadn't really read Alice in Wonderland yet. It still had that Alice in Wonderland mystical feel, and it just circusy and fun with games and tricks and interesting characters, and it was really good. The 11th book, I already talked about this a bit, but it was Heartless by Marissa Meyer. It's an Alice in Wonderland retelling, but it is about the Red Queen and how she became the Red Queen. And it was so well done, like right from the start I was really sucked into this book. And I really loved reading about the Red Queen. And she was a really fun character called Catherine, and she loved baking, and her parents wanted her to marry the king, but she didn't want that, and then she fell in love with the Joker, and it was all with a, yeah, Joker, yes, Jester? He was called Jest, but he was a Joker, I think. And then there was all this intrigue and fun times in Wonderland with all the regular characters of Alice in Wonderland, even though I still hadn't read Alice in Wonderland when I read this. But I just really enjoyed this book a lot. The ending was great, and it was really at times sad, and it made me want to cry, and I just wanted to finish it. It was a great book. I really love this one. It's another 4-star read. And then finally a book I have a copy of. It's Persuasion by Jane Austen, another 4-star read. I really love Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, so I was really excited to start this one. And then at first it was just kind of boring almost, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it, because the family that gets introduced at first, the Elliots, they were just horrible persons, and I really didn't like them at all. But then when it focused on the main character, Anne Elliot, she was really nice, and when the rest of the family was away, it started picking up, and then halfway through I just read everything in one sitting because it was so amazing, and I fell in love, and I realized that yes, this is why I love Jane Austen's books. The story is about like Anne, she was in love with this guy, Frederick Wentworth, when she was younger, and she was going to marry him, but then her family said, no, you shouldn't, he's not good enough for you, and then she listened to her family, which she always regretted, and then 10 years or something later she meets him again, and it's just how they reconnect, and it's really well done and well thought out, and I really enjoyed this book. At first I was afraid I wasn't gonna like it, but I ended up loving it, so this is another 4-star read. The 13th book I read this month is a bit different. It's Autism Goes to School by Dr. Sharon A. Mitchell. It's this book about this man who suddenly finds out he has a son who is already 5 years old when his mother just dumps him on him. And he has to work and learn how to be a parent with this boy, and then he finds out that this boy isn't just a regular boy but also has autism. And this book really describes autism well, and it was super interesting to read how this man tries to connect with his son and finds little ways to actually communicate, and everything goes better once he figures out how to work with someone who has autism, how to help his son and how to make sure that everything goes fine. And he gets help from the school teacher who knows a lot about autism. And just the portrayal of autism in this book is really well done, and I just enjoyed it immensely. The only thing that I didn't like was there's this romance factor in this book between the teacher and the father, and I felt like it wasn't necessary for the book, and I'd rather just it focused on the relationship between father and son, because it was really heartwarming to read about them slowly connecting together as a real family, and it was really great just to read this. The last 4-star read of this month was After Days by Scott Madbury. It's a dystopian where the Chinese, they attacked America with this chemical weapon which causes all adults, except Chinese adults, which is a bit weird to me, but okay, we'll forgive it. Except Chinese adults will die, and so they can take over America and use that to help their growing population to have enough land and stuff. And it follows this group of children who try to like navigate their new worlds and not get arrested by the Chinese, so they have to work for them in work camps and stuff. And I really enjoyed how these young children are depicted when they have come in dangerous situations and they have to fight off dogs, or when someone dies and they feel things. Once they kill someone, they feel that forever, like they're always haunted by it. I feel in a lot of JA, they kill someone and then they're like, yeah, well, I had to do that. And maybe for a few pages they're like, oh my god, I killed someone. But then they just move on because, well, who cares, right? But in this book they keep going back to, oh, and then I had to shoot that person and it was horrible and I will never get over it. And it just are things that they have to live with, and you really feel like, oh, they struggle with these things. They struggle with how to live in a world that has become like this. How do we work with the feelings we now get, because we have to fight these people because they want to kill us, but we don't want to be a killer. And that was really, really interesting to read. I really enjoyed that a lot. Next up are my 2 5-star reads. The first one, I've talked about this book a bit already in this video. It's Alice in Wonderland. I always loved retellings such as Heartless, and I started falling in love with Alice in Wonderland by the Heart no Kuni no Alice series, or Alice in the Country of Hearts. It's originally a game series, which is why I'm showing the games, because I don't actually have the book, the comics of it here. I have them in the Netherlands. That series really started my love for Alice in Wonderland. And now I finally also read Alice in Wonderland. I bought this book when I was in Korea, as mentioned in my book haul, and I really enjoyed reading it. I was so afraid I wouldn't like it because I didn't like the cartoon Disney film of Alice in Wonderland. But I loved how Lewis Carroll like depicted the characters and the dreamlike quantity of it. Like, it always felt like that's just how dreams work. They go from one point to another point, and it doesn't always make sense, but that's just what a dream is, and that I really enjoyed that about it. Also in this version, I've been showing them a bit, there are just really, really nice pictures. Like, I really love those, and that's why I really enjoy this version of Alice in Wonderland by Indigo Books. It's really a great version, and I'm really glad I bought it. And the final book, the book I loved the most this month, was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I mentioned it in my book haul how I ordered the physical copies of this book, but they haven't arrived. I really hoped they would be here by now and that I could like show off my copy, but no such luck, and it's just somewhere in the mail, probably lost. But I read the ebook of The Raven Boys and I was expecting something completely different, which was only based on like the title, The Raven Boys. I expected like half Raven Boys or something. Like in the House of Night series you have this half Raven, half boy characters, and I was expecting something like that, and it didn't turn out like that at all. Because they're just regular boys going to a school called something with Raven, I don't remember the name of the school. But that's why I really loved the characters in this book. Like, they were all so distinct and great. Although I think the name Blue for a character is a bit weird. I think I liked her the least because she just didn't have as much personality as the Raven Boys. But she wasn't annoying in any way. And I absolutely loved the plot. I loved how they were looking for ley lines and magic like in the actual world, and it's something I've always been interested in. Ley lines and tarot cards and predicting the future. Just the sense that they're looking for that and finding more and more evidence that magic is real. And it just makes me want to go with them, like actually with them, finding out these secrets to the world. And through this book I can go with them, and I love it, and I can't wait to read the rest of the series because it was just so amazingly great. and I hope my copy will arrive soon so I can like reread it again, because it was just my favorite book I read this month. So these are the books I read this month, quite many of them actually. Yes, I don't think all my wrap-up videos will be this long or include this many books, but it was a good month. I hope you enjoyed it. I guess I was a bit all over the place for my first wrap-up, and I hope I'll get better with that the next videos, and I hope to see you then. Bye!